Hey guys, SuperHorrorBro Mike here, and in today's Bendy and the Ink Machine video, we take a look at the tragic fate of our good friend Boris, who met a sticky end during the final sequence of Bendy Chapter 4. But what exactly happened to him? How did he transform from this to this? What did Alice Angel do to him? In this video, which will serve as part analysis and part theory, we will be attempting to answer several questions that have been on my mind since playing Chapter 4 at launch. These are: what did Alice do to Boris? And what can this event tell us about the character of Susie Campbell, if she is indeed this version of Alice, and her relationship to studio head Joey Drew? But with all that said guys, let's jump in and begin our analysis of Evil Boris. At the end of Chapter 3, Henry and Boris plummeted to a near certain death down the elevator shaft after Alice Angel's wicked side took full control. Alice stated that she needed this Boris.
It's the most perfect Boris I've ever seen, and I want it! I need it inside, so I can be beautiful again!
After Henry was knocked unconscious during the crash, Boris was stolen away by Alice Angel. And then, during the final seconds of the chapter, we see Boris chained up in Alice's lair, the Angel's silhouette pondering what to do with him. It was between this image here and the end of Chapter 4 that Alice transformed the lovable wolf we spent so much time with in the third chapter of the game into this hulking great monstrosity. And did anyone else notice that we used the gent pipe to take him down, the same weapon Boris gifted Henry in the Heavenly Toys workshop? Yikes. Before we start the whole "but maybe this wasn't the same Boris" line, let me just throw a proverbial wrench in the works. Now, if Henry gives Boris the bone in Chapter 3, he still holds it in his mouth during the Chapter 4 boss encounter, so as sad as some of you may find it, yes, this is almost 100% likely to be the same Boris clone. Sorry. Now let's analyse Evil Boris to see how his body has been transformed. Starting with the head, we can see it appears Boris has lost part of his ear, as well as featuring stitches over both of his eyes, similar to those seen on other dead Boris clones. When first encountering Boris, we hear Alice Angel shout these lines.
Meet the new and improved Boris! I took what I wanted, and in return, I gave him so much more!
This suggests that Alice took parts of Boris, such as his ear and his eyes, to use in her quest to become perfect. Which would also explain why he has a massive hole in his chest with his organs on full display. She then reconstructed him as a reanimated Hulk-like version of his previous self. His body is way bigger than before and seems to have random items wedged into it. See the pipes stuck into his shoulder on the upper right. He also has a massive pair of hands that seem to be tied on by rope. We can also see the overalls he wears are torn up and filthy. As well as this, he has a brace on his leg, a leg with a bone sticking out from it, as well as a foot support. So, what do all of these visual clues suggest? Well, to me they suggest an accident. This body is obviously not the body of the original Boris clone. Instead, I think it may belong to a different worker at the studio, one who perhaps had a rather nasty accident, like perhaps falling down a massive shaft in the floor. This would explain why the objects are wedged in his shoulder, the broken leg and foot, and the torn and sullied clothing. Alice could have discovered this corpse and dragged it back to her hideout, where she then fused Boris's head on top of it, filling it full of that thick ink that Henry collected for her in Chapter 3 to create a demented, reanimated version of his old pal. Look to Boris's head. It certainly appears to be strapped on there. If we look back to the reveal trailer of Bendy Chapter 4, we can see that Alice Angel seems to have Boris strapped down to a machine. It's hard to clearly make out, but we can tell it's him. The machine sparks, almost as if it's cutting and welding parts together. I believe this was a sneak peek at the procedure Alice put Boris through in order to place him inside a new body. which would mean all of the parts Henry was collecting for Alice throughout Chapter 3 were actually being put to use into this machine to transform Boris this whole time, which is a creepy twist if you really think about it. Henry was directly responsible for providing Alice with the parts she needed to transform his old pal into this abomination. And this also explains why Boris dissolves into a puddle of ink after Henry defeats him, while none of the other worker transformations at the studio do, including other Boris clones. His makeup is unstable, and has been put together very quickly, with a new body made up from ink that keeps the organs within it alive. Alice then stuck Boris's head on top. But why would she do this? Well, for one, it would allow her to communicate and issue commands directly to Boris. What do heads include? Why, brains of course. And my theory about the halo surrounding Boris's head is that it isn't simply a trademark of Alice's own halo, but rather a way of controlling him via commands issued directly to his brain. Notice that Alice is telling Boris what to do during this fight.
Boris, tear him apart. Leave nothing.
So it seems that this halo is the reason he is so powerless to resist her. I have no idea how Alice got her hands on mind control technology, but in the world of Bendy, where a machine exists capable of creating living cartoons from employees at the studio, it's not really that much of a stretch, right? So now we understand what happened to Boris and why he follows Alice's commands, but how did Alice manage to pull all of this off? After all, we assume this Alice is the original voice actress Susie Campbell, who seemed a little ditzy and not exactly tech savvy, at least going by her audio logs. So how did Susie go from cute and adorable actress to maniacal evil mastermind? I don't have a solid answer for this, but I believe we do have enough information to speculate and come to some logical conclusions here. We know that at one point Susie had a soft spot for Joey, and he seemed to exploit that to his advantage.
But I gotta say, he wasn't at all what I expected. Quite the charmer. He even called me Alice. I liked it.
But then after replacing her with a new voice actress called Alison Pendle, Susie seemed to fall into a deep despair.
Apparently I didn't get the memo. Alice Angel will now be voiced by Miss Alison Pendle. A part of me died when he said that. There's gotta be a way to fix this.
I believe this was a setup by Joey, who wished to make her feel desperate and willing to do almost anything to regain the role she was once so in love with.
But this is the first character I really felt a connection with. She's a part of me.
We hear in an audio log from Susie during the early moments of Chapter 4 that Joey had approached her with a proposal, which I believe was to involve her in the Ink Machine project and use her as a test subject in order to create a living version of Alice.
Now he wants to meet again tomorrow? Says he has an opportunity for me? I'll hear him out.
This didn't seem to go to plan, as Susie mentions she was originally reanimated as a wiggling, pussing mess of ink. However, she later states that she was reborn as an angel. Not a perfect angel though. She only half resembles the perfect version of Alice seen in the Bendy cartoons. And so began her quest for perfection by consuming other workers' body parts in an attempt to rebuild and make herself whole again. An interesting piece of information dropped recently on the official Bendy Twitter page. An image showing the hanging cages in Chapter 4 with the quotation, "Rumour has it that this is where the imperfections wait to meet their fate, listening to the angel's song and counting the days." Judging by this tweet, it almost sounds as if this secret research facility beneath the studio is where Joey kept Susie, potentially caged up while he attempted to perfect her. And he did this by feeding her the remains of the failed test experiments such as the Lost Ones, which explains why they fear angels so much. This means that Joey would have been feeding Susie's old co-workers to her, with the promise that consuming their inky forms would help make her perfect. How messed up and dark is that? And if true, this explains Susie's cannibalistic bloodlust and the reason she has gone through so many Boris clones. After all, we have no idea how long she has been surviving in this state, perhaps for many years, in which time such behaviour would drive anyone insane. So now we have a possible explanation for Susie's mental state, and why she's been doing what she's been doing, and a very disturbing one at that. Joey truly was the embodiment of evil if this theory holds up, and it would also explain Susie's hatred for Bendy if he is in fact Joey Drew. But with that said, it brings us to the end of today's video. So, what do you guys think of all of this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And that's it for today's video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy watching, and maybe drop a comment too, as well as subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you never miss an upload. This channel specializes in variety horror content, including creepypasta readings, horror gaming facts and theories, and general interest pop culture horror videos. So if you are interested in all things spooky, you'll find something to enjoy here at SuperHorrorBro. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.